Share this with. Find out the details of the major sports coverage on offer across BBC television, radio and online this week. Visit our live guide for direct links to all our live sporting coverage, including text commentaries, while BBC Sport app. Users can also set event reminders so they never miss a moment of their favorite sports. All times GMT, then BST from Sunday, 25th of March. Times are subject to change. The BBC is not responsible for any changes that may be made. For more details of forthcoming coverage, visit the specific sport page on the website. Coverage on BBC Red Button can be subject to late schedule changes. It is FA Cup quarter-final weekend, with live coverage of Wigan v Southampton and Leicester v Chelsea on BBC One, finals day at the Badminton All-England Championships and the conclusion of the Women's Six Nations. 7:25 to 8:30, football, match of the day, repeat, BBC One 8:30 to 9 o'clock, football, Mott, FA Cup quarter-final highlights, BBC One 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, Sports Week, BBC Radio 5 Live 11:50 to 18:15, Badminton, All-England Championships, finals day, BBC Red Button and online 13:15 to 15:35, football, Wigan v Southampton, FA Cup quarter-final, BBC One, 13:30 to 15:30, BBC Radio 5 Live, build-up from 12 o'clock, 13:25 to 20:30. Cricket, North v South, BBC Sport Online, until 2000 hours, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra, 13:45 to 15:45, Rugby Union, Italy Women v Scotland Women, Women's Six Nations, Connected TV and online, repeated 18:15 to 20:15, BBC Red Button, 16:05 to 18:35, football, Leicester v Chelsea, FA Cup quarter-final, BBC One, 16:30 to 18:30, BBC Radio 5 Live, build-up from 15:30, 18:30 to 2000 hours, football, 606, phone-in, BBC Radio 5 Live 2000 hours to 2300 hours, tennis, Roger Federer v Juan Martín del Potro, Indian Wells final, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 2100 hours to 2200 hours, famously unfit for sports relief, BBC Two 2240 to 2340, Paddy McGuinness Sport Relief Warm-Up, BBC One 2255 to 2325, Rugby Union, Women's Six Nations Highlights, BBC Two, 0:15 to 0:45 in Wales. The Women's FA Cup semi-final draw will be made on Connected TV and online early on Monday morning. BBC Two will be showing highlights from the final weekend of the Women's Six Nations, while on BBC Red Button the St Patrick's Day Schools Cup finals take place. 7 o'clock to 1300 hours, football, FA Cup quarter-finals catch-up, BBC Red Button 7:45 to 8 o'clock, football, Women's FA Cup semi-final draw, Connected TV and online 1300 hours to 13:30, Rugby Union, Women's Six Nations Highlights, BBC Two, repeated 16:45 to 19:40, BBC Red Button, 16:45 to 17:15, BBC Two NE, 1300 hours to 16:45, Gaelic Games, St Patrick's Day Schools Cup Finals, BBC Red Button and online 1900 hours to 2100 hours, football, the Monday Night Club, BBC Radio 5 Live 2100 hours to 2200 hours, Rugby Union Weekly, BBC Radio 5 Live 2200 hours to 2230, Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy, BBC Radio 5 Live 0:15 to 1 o'clock, Rugby League, Super League Show, BBC One, North West, North East, and Cumbria, Yorks and Links and Yorkshire only. BBC Two has the Super League Show action, while the Challenge Cup 5th round draw is on Connected TV and online. BBC Radio 5 Live previews Anthony Joshua's heavyweight championship bout with Joseph Parker, and there is a sport relief special as Darren Campbell looks at the ways people are getting active. 1300 hours to 13:45, Rugby League, Super League Show, BBC Two, repeated 1900 hours to 2150, BBC Red Button, 1855 to 1930, Rugby League, Challenge Cup 5th round draw, Connected TV and online 1930 to 2030, Sport Relief Special, Darren Campbell's Get Inspired, BBC Radio 5 Live 2030 to 2100 hours, Boxing, Anthony Joshua v Joseph Parker preview, BBC Radio 5 Live 2100 hours to 2200 hours, Boxing, Pretty Boy, A Tale of Bare Knuckle Boxing, BBC Radio 5 Live 2200 hours to 2230, Football, EuroLeague's football show, BBC Radio 5 Live. The BBC Red Button has coverage of the Gymnastics World Cup from Birmingham. Cricket fans can catch up with the latest news and reaction on the Tuffers and Vaughan Cricket Show on BBC Radio 5 Live, while the latest match in the North v South series will be covered live from Barbados Online and on BBC Radio 5 Live Sport Extra. 12:30 to 2100 hours, Cricket, North v South, BBC Sport Online, BBC Radio 5 Live Sport Extra. 1325 to 1855, 1900 hours to 2100 hours, Gymnastics, World Cup, BBC Red Button and Online. 1930 to 2030, Cricket, The Tuffers and Vaughan Cricket Show, BBC Radio 5 Live. 23:59 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 1, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. China face Wales in the China Cup on BBC One Wales, while the Gymnastics World Cup continues on the Red Button, and there is Live Super League commentary on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra as witness Vikings play Salford Red Devils. 23:59 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 1, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 11:20 to 13:45, Football, Match of the Day. Wales Live, China v Wales, BBC One Wales, BBC Red Button, Connected TV and Online. 1900 hours to 2100 hours, Gymnastics, World Cup, BBC Red Button, Connected TV and Online. 1945 to 2200 hours, Rugby League, witness Vikings v Salford Red Devils, Super League, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra, build up from 1900 hours, 2000 hours to 2100 hours, Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix Preview, BBC Radio 5 Live. 2200 hours to 2230, Football, The Premier League Show, BBC Two, 23:15 to 23:45, BBC Two Wales and 23:20 to 23:50. BBC NE, 0:30 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 2, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. England continue in the first test against New Zealand in Auckland on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra, while Worcester Wolves face Sheffield Sharks on the BBC Sport website and app. 0:30 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 2, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 0:55 to 2:35, Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix, First Practice, BBC Sport Online. 4:55 to 6:35, Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix, Second Practice, BBC Sport Online. 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Football, the FA People's Cup for Sport Relief, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 11 o'clock to 19:30 and 21:30 to 23:30, Football, Sport Relief, 5A Side, BBC Red Button and Online. 19:30 to 21:30, Rugby Union, Scrum v Dragons v Cheetahs, Pro 14, BBC Two Wales and BBC Red Button. 19:30 to 21:30, Rugby Union, Connaught v Edinburgh, Pro 14, BBC Alba, Connected TV and Online. 19:30 to 21:30, Basketball, Worcester Wolves v Sheffield Sharks, Beryl, Connected TV and Online. 1945 to 2200 hours, Football, Netherlands v England, International Friendly, BBC Radio 5 Live, build up from 1900 hours, 1945 to 2200 hours, Rugby League, Leeds Rhinos v Castleford Tigers, Super League, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra, build up from 1900 hours, 23:15 to 0:05, Football, Scotland v Costa Rica Highlights, International Friendly, BBC Two Scotland. 0:30 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 3, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. Watch live coverage of the boat races. Oxford and Cambridge Universities race each other on BBC One and Online, plus listen to Rugby Union commentary as Saracens host Harlequins in the Premiership on BBC Radio 5 Live. 0:30 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 3, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 2:55 to 4:04, Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix, Final Practice, BBC Sport Online. 5 o'clock to 5:30, Boxing, 5 Live Boxing with Costello and Buns, BBC Radio 5 Live. 5:55 to 7:05, Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix, Qualifying, BBC Radio 5 Live. 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, The Danny Baker Show, BBC Radio 5 Live. 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Fighting Talk, BBC Radio 5 Live. 12 o'clock to 12:30, Football, Football Focus, BBC One. 14:05 to 15:50, Gymnastics, World Cup Highlights, BBC One 1500 hours to 1700 hours, Rugby Union, Saracens v Harlequins, Premiership, BBC Radio 5 Live, build up from 1400 hours, 1550 to 1815, Rowing, The Boat Race, BBC One, Connected TV and Online 1700 hours to 1800 hours, Sports Report, BBC Radio 5 Live 1800 hours to 2000 hours, Football, 606, Phone-In, BBC Radio 5 Live 0:30 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 4, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. The Formula One season returns with the Australian Grand Prix live on BBC Radio 5 Live, and follow action from the Women's Super League across the BBC Red Button and BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 0:30 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 4, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 5:30 to 8 o'clock, Formula One, Australian Grand Prix, Race, BBC Radio 5 Live 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, Sports Week, BBC Radio 5 Live 12:25 to 14:30, Football, Bristol City Women v Manchester City Women, Women's Super League 1, BBC Red Button and Online 13:45 to 16:15, Football, Chelsea Ladies v Reading Women, Women's Super League 1, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 1500 hours to 1700 hours, Rugby Union, Leicester Tigers v Wasps, Premiership, BBC Radio 5 Live 1730 to 1800 hours, At Home with Colin Murray, BBC Radio 5 Live 1800 hours to 1930, Football, 606, Phone-In, BBC Radio 5 Live 2100 hours to 2135, Football, The Women's Football Show, BBC Red Button, 0:15 to 0:50, BBC One, 1:45 to 10 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 5, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. You can view BBC Sport output as well as listen to our radio sports programming on the BBC iPlayer. The BBC Sport website is available via desktop, mobile, tablet and app, giving fast and easy access to the live stream, text commentaries, news, reports, schedules, videos, as well as highlights of the day's action. The BBC Sport app is available free on Apple and Android devices. National and regional variations have been included in this list where possible, but please check your local listings for more detailed information. Share this with